Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk you through all the books that I managed to read in the month of July. July was the month of Game Night-a-thon for me. This is a readathon hosted by my booktube friend Clio on the channel Bemuse Bookworm. I will link her channel down below. Definitely go check her out because I love her videos very much, and I think if you enjoy my videos you will probably enjoy hers as well. So today we're going to talk about 11 books that I read for the readathon, or that I finished for the readathon I should say, because I did even read a little bit more, and this readathon definitely pushed me to read a lot and I had a lot of fun. I got some good books off my physical TBR that had been sitting there for way too long, so let's get started. But before I talk you through the books with individual book reviews, I want to tell you a few stats that have to do with my goal of reducing my TBR to 0. And at this point I feel very foolish even saying that, but I started doing this for this year, so we are going to continue. But as you can probably already tell, things didn't go as planned in July. So as a little recap, I started out the year with 37 books on my TBR, and my goal was to read that down to 0 this year. So let's see how we're doing. Now, I started out June with 51 books on the TBR, so you can already tell that this year the TBR reduction is not reductioning. However, Maybe July was great. We can all hope, right? I read a ton of books, so I should have reduced that TBR, right? We have 3 important numbers when it comes to the TBR reduction. The first one I already told you. I finished 11 books in July. Then we have the number of books that I bought. And I somehow bought 8 books in July. How did that even happen? I don't even know. Like, how? I mean, I know how. Like, some of these were audiobooks. One was The Alloy of Law, which we will talk about in a second. And then I also got 2 books in Paris as kind of a keepsake. But like, how do I always end up buying books? And then we also have the number of books that I borrowed in July, and in July I borrowed 4 books. So if we take this together, we have 11 books read, 8 books bought and 4 books borrowed. I have added 1 book to the TBR in July. So we ended July with 52 books on the TBR, and I'm telling you right now, if I don't get under 50 again in August, I'll just give up. I will just give up the whole 0 TBR thing. Like, it doesn't seem to be happening. However, I must say that I read some big books in this month, and I bought some small books this month. So I think pages wise, I still did quite good, but August has to be the month. Like, I keep saying that, but August has to be the month when we actually get this TBR number down. Now, after this very terrible little excursion that is always excruciating for me, let's talk about the 11 books that I actually read in July. So the first book I finished in July I had already mentioned just a second ago, and that was Alloy of Law by Sanderson. This is the first book in the second era Mistborn series, and it follows new characters. It is set a couple of 100 years after the first Mistborn series. I finished reading Mistborn Era 1 at the beginning of the year, so I thought I'll just take that momentum, which was not very much momentum at all, to continue this series now. I didn't love the first era of Mistborn, but I had a much better time with this book. In this one we follow 3 characters. We mainly follow Wax and Wayne, and these 2 are basically people who lived in the outskirts of this area where everything is kind of like Wild West feeling, and they were bringing people to justice there. However, Wax is actually the heir to this family that is very rich and living in the city, and when something terrible happens to his uncle, he inherits everything, his title and stuff. So he has to go to the city to take care of his like family stuff. He tries to leave behind his ways, but it doesn't work out that well. So this one is very fun. It's really just fun. It didn't have like too much of like the magic stuff going on, because like that really bothered me in the early Mistborn novels, that how the magic works is just so over explained. So I just had a much better time with this book, and it's also significantly shorter, so I think that worked really well too. It has a little bit of like a crime solving aspect to it, so I always like when that happens in a story, and overall I gave this one 4 stars. There were definitely still some moments that bothered me, but not as much as in Arrow 1. Then the next book I finished was something I got as a gift at some point, Die weiße Masai. This is a book written by a Swiss woman called Corinne Hofmann. She was traveling to Kenya, I believe, in the 80s, and while she is there, she sees this Massai man and she wildly falls in love with him, and then turns over her whole life to be with him. Now, this is a copy from like the 90s, I would guess. It still has like all like previous German currency on the back before we got euros. So this is an old copy, and the whole marketing of this is still like super romantic love story. I think newer versions of this book are much more like maybe toxic relationship marketing, and I think that would be much better for this book, because this relationship turns very toxic very fast, and it ends with them getting divorced and basically Corinne and her then daughter fleeing the country. So this is autobiographical. I always had like a like not very high hopes for this book, because this is a white woman writing about Masai. In the end, I gave this one 2.5 stars. I think that the writing in this isn't great. I think that especially the beginning is very cringy, but when it starts talking more about how she is trying to build this life and all of the steps she's doing, while this woman is very, very clueless, I still feel like that was an interesting part of the story. Then the next book I finished was an ebook from my library, and that was Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This is the second book in the Emily Wilde trilogy, and in this one we follow a woman called Emily Wilde. She is a researcher for fairies, and in the first book she travels to this remote island to study the fairies there, and she is joined by her kind of academic rival there, and they do start to have a little bit of a romance together. Now in the second book we follow these characters into the Alps, where they are trying to discover more about the fairy realms. And I really liked this book. I liked it just as much as the first one. I think with this series, what really sells it for me is the fantasy aspects, the way that these characters travel and investigate the fairies, the kind of fairies we see, the worlds of the fairies we get to explore in this as well. And so for me, that is like the selling point. With the romance, I don't really buy it. I don't really think it is developed in a way that really makes me feel anything, but that is very, very subjective, and I know that a lot of people love this romance. I do like the characters individually, I just do not see their chemistry at all, but I'm having a good time with this series. I gave this one 4 stars as well. Then next up, I finished my audiobook, and that was Labyrinth Heart by M.A. Carrick. This is the third and final book in the Rook and Rose trilogy, which has already a full reading vlog on my channel, which I can link down below. If you want to hear all of my thoughts on the series, you can go check it out. But if I should sum it up in any way, it's just go read the series. It's fantastic. And when I heard that these two authors that write under the name M.A. Carrick have already announced that they're working on a duology and the first book of that will be out next year, I got so excited because whatever these two authors are doing together, it freaking works, and I need more. I love this series so much. Now, if you don't know, in the Rook and Rose trilogy, the beginning of this trilogy, we follow a woman called Wren, who is a con artist, and she is trying to get into one of the noble families to basically take their money. However, it expands and expands, and it gets so much more. We have different magic systems in this world. We have kind of a colonial story because the city all of this takes place in is kind of a colonized city where people rule that are not native to this land. However, all the surrounding land is not ruled by these colonizers anymore, and so there's a lot of rebellion going on as well, people trying to get their city back from the colonizers and all of that. So there's just a lot going on politically with the different religions, with the different magic systems. There is delicious character dynamics in this book and in the series in general, and I just ate it up. I gave this book 5 stars. Then the next book I read was Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood. This book has been on my TBR for a ridiculously long time, since the Netflix TV show came out, and that was many years ago. So I'm very happy that I finally read this book thanks to Game Night-a-thon. And in this one we have a murder case that actually happened in history. We have a woman, Grace Marks, and she was accused of kind of being one of the 2 people who did this murder. So basically she is accused of murdering her employer and his mistress together with another kind of servant who worked at this house. And the man she is accused of working together with was hanged. However, she is sentenced to life in prison. And when we start this book, she has already been in prison for a long time. I think when she was put into prison, she was 16 or something. She was very young. So when we meet her, I think she's in her 30s. So she has been in there for a while. And we follow kind of this story when a psychologist guy shows up and he is trying to discover whether Grace actually did it, because she claims she can't remember the day when everything went down. And so yeah, he's trying to retrieve her memory of that. This was a very fascinating read. This is historical fiction, so it's much more about Grace's life in general. She was an Irish immigrant into Canada at the time, and it's just about her family and her struggles as a working class girl who's also an immigrant and just trying to make it in this world. It was a very fascinating read. The ending gets a little bit wild, I would say. We do have some facts about Grace's life, and so what Margaret Atwood does is kind of trying to color in the spaces in between that we don't know about, and some things are left open a little bit, I would say. So in the end, I gave this one 4 stars. Then next I finished Gifted and Talented by Olivie Blake, another book I had gotten from the library. And this book is a bit of an odd one for me, but I definitely wanted to try one of Olivie Blake's books, and I had been on the waitlist for this book for weeks and weeks and weeks. Gifted and Talented is compared to the TV show Succession, which I have not watched, so I can't really speak to that, but it has fantasy elements. In this one, we follow this big tech company that was founded by one man, and this man at the beginning of the book passes away, and we have his 3 adult children, and the question is, who's gonna inherit what. So these three children could not be more different from each other. We have the eldest daughter, who is the CEO of her own company, and she has always tried to kind of live up to her father's expectations. Then we have the son, who is a politician, and again, he has always kind of tried to live up to his father's expectations, but always felt like he never could. And we have the youngest daughter, who was a ballet dancer until she had a terrible accident, and then she started working for her father's company, and she's like the only one who had a real relationship with her father. And this book is messy as hell. All of these characters are messy as hell. They are all dealing with a ton of stuff, and this is just one of those like popcorn reads where you just like watching the mess, enjoying the scenes, but I don't feel like it goes any deeper than that, and that is kind of like what I was hoping for a little bit. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Next I finished I Feed Her to the Beast, and the Beast is Me by Jamison Shea. This is a YA horror book in which we follow a main character called Laure, and she is a ballet dancer in Paris. She wants to be like a big ballet star. However, she is black, and because of that, even though she's always top of her class, she doesn't get the same opportunities as her white like co-dancers, I guess. So in the end, she has the opportunity to make a deal with this river of blood that runs under the city to kind of level out the playing field. And this book is full of ambition, full of rage, and I definitely enjoyed that. I'm not like super interested in ballet stories per se, so that was something that, yeah, I was like super intrigued by, but I still like really enjoyed Laure as a character and the way that she just cared so much. This one also has a little bit of a romance that I appreciated, but it's like very, very sprinkled in. It's like not a huge plot point at all. And overall, I just didn't really love the ending. I feel like it kind of lost track of itself a little bit. I am still considering reading the sequel because this is a duology. For now, I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then I finished another audiobook, and this one was The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Sen Jo. This really reminded me of Niveau's novellas. This is Asian inspired. It kind of has this feeling of a prequel to like more books, but so far this is a standalone novella. In this one we follow a nun who is working at a restaurant when this band of bandits appears, and the bandits are doing something that cause her to lose her job, and so she decides to travel with the bandits instead. But she has some secrets, the bandits have some secrets, and then there is like one bandit in particular who has secrets, and we just watch them travel this land as there is like a war going on, and a lot of like what they know is falling apart. And I did have a good time with this. This is very queer, and I did enjoy that. But as I said, it just had this kind of like prequel feeling to it. And when the book ends, you are starting to really feel for these characters and to really love these characters, but then the story is kind of over. So that was a bit unfortunate, and I really hope the author will return to this and maybe write more books. So in the end, I gave this one 4 stars. Then I finished another book from my physical TBR, and that was The Mountain in the Sea by Ray Nayler. Now, if you look at this cover, you already know that I was super interested in this book because I love octopuses. We do have a big octopus on the cover. In this one, we have 3 main perspectives, I would say. The main perspective is of a woman who researches sea creatures, in particular octopuses. And at the beginning of the book, she is taken to this island where basically everyone who ever lived on this island, they have all been sent away. This whole island has been bought by a corporation and completely cleared of people. And she is there to investigate this one particular octopus who's supposed to live in this shipwreck just off the coast. On this island, there is only an android and a military person who's there for their safety. And they investigate the octopus. Then we have the perspective of a hacker who is hired to hack something that seems impossible, but he is the best of his craft, and so he might be able to do it. And we see kind of the dangers of knowledge and just like these corporations and what they are willing to do with his perspective. And last but not least, we follow a man who was abducted and is a victim of human trafficking. He basically gets abducted and then wakes up on a ship, and he's forced to work on the ship, and he can't escape. Like, they're out in the water, and he just has to do what people tell him to do, and it's like a really horrifying view of this world. And so this is kind of sci-fi, but also kind of dystopian, because you can really see like the horrors of this society. And I would say we're not like super far removed from stuff like that. You can see how the ocean is like completely empty of fish. So much of the environment has been destroyed. We have all of this talk of AI and consciousness and big corporations trying to kind of advance the whole like artificial consciousness situation. And just as I said, the lengths that these corporations are willing to go, and how little a human life is really worth in this world because of how things have progressed, but also how these characters all try to fight back in a way and try to find their way in this world that is like very hostile to them and gets lonelier by the second. So in the end, I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is also like quite philosophical in its approach, and I really enjoyed that. Then I finished Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. This is also a book I had since it came out, which has been so many years ago, but the readathon finally pushed me to read through this. If you don't know, this is a children's book that has beautiful illustrations and then also little biographies. Although you can see my not favorite person that is in this book, but it is really well made, I would say. I really love the illustrations, and the little biographies are really written for children, so they are not very informative, but this can still be an interesting book to kind of see like which women you would like to know more about. I felt like the selection of people that is in there is a little bit skewed. So for example, for the scientists section, all of these women that are mentioned are in some sort of STEM situation. So I think there is more like interesting researchers from like different areas that could have been highlighted in here. We do have a few spies and pirates, which I think like one would have sufficed. We don't really need multiple of those as like inspiration for girls nowadays, I guess. You can discuss certain people that are in here like Coco Chanel and Margaret Thatcher, because they weren't great people, and the kind of like biographies you get in there aren't always like really portraying that they weren't such great people, even though they reached like high levels of like fame and stuff and power. So in the end, I gave this one 4 stars. I still really like the idea, and as I said, I really liked the illustrations, but I think it could also have been better. And the last book I finished was another little audiobook, and that was House Party Murder Rap by Sonia Parin. And in this one, we have a 1920s cozy mystery. We follow our main character of Evie Parker, who is an American, but she married a British man. However, now unfortunately, he has passed away and she is a widow, and she returns to England to go to the house party of her dead husband's best friend. However, her life seems to be in danger, and so she's trying to figure out who might be after her or potentially after someone else and she's just in the way. So this was really fun. I really liked the character of Evie. I think that she is a fun character to follow around. I liked that there is like the tiniest sprinkling or like the tiniest possibility of a romance set up in this one, but because Evie is a widow and she really loved her husband, she is not really in the marriage market or anything like that. And yeah, I just had a good time with this. It did have not enough like sleuthing for my taste, so I wanted to see more investigation going on. Evie more so stumbles upon the clues, and that was a little bit sad, but the book is also very short, and I think for what it is entertaining and fun. I gave it 3.5 stars. So these were all the books I finished in July, which was quite a lot, and the video is already quite long. However, I do want to talk quickly for those who are interested about how my sabbatical is going a little bit before I let you go. But if you're not interested in that, obviously you can skip out of the video right now. There will be no more book talk after this moment. So you may know I started my sabbatical in May and I'm taking 6 months off. So right now at the end of July, we have reached the halfway point of my sabbatical and I can't really believe we're already halfway through. Like, time is really flying by, but I feel like now I have also kind of settled into the sabbatical quite a bit. I did have 2 fun travel plans for July, which was great. I went to Prague and I also went to Paris. Paris was a solo travel, and in Prague I met up with my YouTube friend Daniela. I will link her channel down below as well, so you can go and check it out. But both of these trips were absolutely fantastic and I'm really glad that I got to go, and also that it is so simple from Germany to reach these cities, which is great because like for Prague I took the bus and for Paris I took the train, and it was just like super easy and simple and lovely. Traveling wise, July was a success. I think life wise it was quite a mixed bag. Unfortunately, we started having the worst weather in Germany. Like, I don't remember having such a sad July in years. Obviously, it's great for nature that we do get a little bit more rain, as the previous years often have been way too dry, but it's still sad. Like, every morning I wake up and it's like gray and dark outside, it's raining, the cat is unhappy, so yeah, it's not really feeling like this was July, if you know what I mean. I did have some health issues. I'm still like figuring things out with my terrible tooth, so hopefully that is settled right now, but I'm still not completely pain-free, so that has me like really worried that there's still something wrong with it, and it's just like I hate it so much. But let's not get into it. I did have some migraine days again, but I do know why. I had like very clear like triggers. It just happens. You can't avoid every migraine. It's just not happening like that. And I feel like with all the pain I had with the tooth again, I'm like really relieved that I didn't have more migraine days, because sometimes pain can trigger more pain for me. Luckily that didn't happen. So I feel like in that regard, July wasn't like the best month. I definitely had like rough days in July, but I was really happy about the readathon. It was so much fun. I really loved that, and it definitely brightened up my days a lot as well. Overall, I would say July was really a mixed bag, and I feel like a lot of OC was watched just to get through some of these days, and I'm really glad that while I have these health issues, I am not forced to work through them, because I had that in the past and it's like one of the reasons I just feel so terrible and I was so burned out, I guess. So all that to say, July wasn't the best month for the sabbatical, but the traveling was great and amazing, and I can only just hope that August will be just as great with the traveling, but maybe also a little bit more great with just the life stuff again. So we're hoping for finally please some better weather again. And yeah, there was just like one instance where I got a little bit into work stuff again in July, and I regretted it immediately. So that wasn't great. That was not great. However, I did also get the news that I will receive some funding for my research starting in November. So that's now the definite end of my sabbatical, and I will stay in this town a little bit longer so I can do that research. But after that, like, I will definitely see that as kind of like a trial run, and if I still don't love doing this job anymore, which is totally fine, like sometimes just have to change careers, then I will let it go. Like, this is like my final kind of try to have enjoyment in that job again. So we'll see about that. But that's all I need to say for that. I hope that you had a fun July. Definitely let me know what was the best book you've read in July. I would love to hear about that. And I will talk to you very soon with my Paris vlog. My next video will be my Paris vlog. So, bye!